Now to talk about our big news story from this week that I think caught us all by surprise, and that is Jim France essentially stepping down. Obviously, the France family still have a hold on NASCAR. Obviously, they're the main stakeholder in the company. This and that. Of course, they're going to be a big part of NASCAR forever, for sure. But this is the first time that a France family member will not be the head of the table when it comes to NASCAR and its decisions. That is now going to be, surprisingly enough, Steve O'Donnell will now be CEO, and Ben Kennedy, who is a member of the France family, he is a France, is the chief operating officer, the COO in this case. And I found this to be a very interesting decision that I am kind of mixed about. I'm okay with Jim France stepping down. I do want some new blood in there. I do want somebody new in there. I think that would be really cool to maybe not have a France family member be the head of the table for a little bit. Put somebody different in charge. Maybe if that can change some things around. I've gone on the record. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Steve O'Donnell. I haven't been a big fan of him for a while now. I think I've began to come around on him a little bit this season because he seems like he's trying his very best to get in touch with the fans and figure out what the fans want. He's kind of taken that Ben Kennedy sort of approach, which I'm appreciative of. Just the overall way I feel about this, I like the move for Steve O'Donnell becoming the CEO as long as there is a contingency plan for Ben Kennedy, because I want Ben Kennedy to eventually be the head of the table, but at the same time I don't think Ben Kennedy is ready right now to be the head of the table. But if there is some sort of plan for Ben Kennedy to eventually be in charge, maybe 5 to 10 years from now, for him to be the CEO of the company, 5 to 10 years from now, I think this is a golden plan if that's the case. If not, if Steve O'Donnell is the plan for until he doesn't want the job anymore, I'm maybe not as gun ho about it, but maybe Steve O'Donnell can change my mind on that. But I like this move. I like this move. I'm curious. It's very surprising as well. It's something I did not see coming at all. And a very surprising move, having a France family member essentially give up the reins to a certain degree. I want to get the boys' opinions on this. I'll start with Tyler, because I think Tyler was extremely surprised about this as well, because me and Tyler worked together, and he came into my room and all of a sudden was like, wait, what the hell? Is this real? Like, we didn't believe it. It was very surprising. But Tyler, how do you feel about this? Jim France stepping down as CEO, and now Steve O'Donnell is the head of the table. Steve Phelps is probably like, shit. He's probably very upset right now. But Steve O'Donnell is now the head of the table. How do we feel about this?
Man, at first, when I first seen the news, I was nervous. I was extremely nervous. I wasn't sure how Steve was going to handle anything. I didn't know if he was going to get kind of like uppity or what exactly his response was going to be. But the man has shown for the first week, I mean, it's only been like 7 days or whatever it's been. I don't know. But for the first week, the man is showing huge, huge, huge potential to flip everybody's opinion on the higher ups of NASCAR. So I hope he stays on his track right now. I mean, all of us, the first thing we thought he was going to do was ban Carson's celebration. The first thing he did was let's say, the hell I'm not. I'm going to leave that alone. If the fans like it, I like it. So he's definitely catching on quicker to our cheese and pretzels kind of way, I guess you can say, instead of wine and crackers. So I'm hoping for this. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. But like you said, Ben Kennedy definitely needs a plan to come into the actual reins of this all because I feel like he needs to be the head of the sport eventually. But he definitely needs something better to follow than what he's followed or what he had to follow. So I think Steve's laying down a golden path for him. If him and Steve can stay on this path of listen to the fans and listen to what we need and what we want, I think we'll be okay.
Because, yeah, I agree with you that I think Steve has done a good job so far, it only being a couple of days. But I think the thing he's done a good job with is something that we never saw from Jim France, or really at all with any of the France family, whether it was Brian or Lil Bill or Big Bill France, is they're technically the ones at the head of the table, but they're not the face. If you remember, it was always Mike Helton, and then it was Steve Phelps. Now lately it's been Steve O'Donnell, as they're kind of like the face of NASCAR management, I guess you could call it, or whatever the NASCAR hierarchy system, I guess, whatever you want to call it. That none of those France family members have been the face, and I think that's always been a problem with Jim. Especially, I think Jim is probably the worst culprit of it. I never saw Big Bill in action, so I couldn't give you exactly what Big Bill was like, but I have heard stories, and these guys just kind of rule with an iron fist, and they're not a face of the sport. They don't show any personality. They don't really show what their opinion on a situation may be. And I think that's one thing I do like about Steve O'Donnell is that he's trying to get along with the fans. He's trying to listen to the fans and their opinions. He's trying to be a fan of the sport because in his heart he is. And that's one thing I do give respect to O'Donnell is that he is a fan of the sport. He's been around a long time. He's obviously made a lot of mistakes that have made me not too fond of him over the last couple of years, but I'm trying to come around on him for sure. And he's doing a good job so far. And I think him allowing the Carson Host of our celebration, I think that made a lot of people even more fond of him because of him allowing that. So overall, I think it's a good move for O'Donnell taking up the head, being the CEO, the head of the table, because none of those France family members really showed who they were. They would just make decisions and then they would hide. They would make decisions and hide. Like that's one thing I'll give a lot of credit to two commissioners. I mean, one of the commissioners I think I've came around a little bit more, that being Roger Goodell. But Roger Goodell and Adam Silver, I'm not a big fan of Adam Silver myself, but at least when they make a decision that the fans don't really like or this or that, they at least put their face and put their name behind it. Well, Jim France just says things into existence and just doesn't put his name behind it or anything, doesn't talk in front of the cameras, doesn't have press conferences, doesn't do any of that sort of stuff. And I'm hoping with someone like Steve O'Donnell, we'll see the opinion of the head of the table actually out there and him do interviews and this and that. Because Jim France has like a handful of interviews out there. And if he does do an interview, it's like short and sweet, very short and sweet. He doesn't want to be in front of the camera. And I get that. But we need somebody that's able to be the face of our sport, like in that sort of perspective, in the NASCAR hierarchy system that isn't like third, fourth, or fifth in command, like we had with a Mike Helton, like we had with Steve Phelps, like we've had with Steve O'Donnell at points as well. Cory, what are your feelings on all this? Steve O'Donnell is now the CEO of NASCAR.
I think it's a huge step in the right direction. I think I don't personally care for Steve O'Donnell in either way, but the listening to Denny Hamlin's podcast, listening to Door Bumper Clear and what Noah Gragson said and Chase Briscoe said and Denny Hamlin said and Freddie Kraft, and it's that Steve O'Donnell has more of a ear to the sport and listens to what the drivers say than previous leadership, and seems more apt to actually make a change and be quicker to find a solution than just baby steps, band-aids every single time. So in that perspective, I'm excited. That's basically my whole standpoint on it, because I mean, we have to see what he does. I think everything you guys said is right. I just think I feel like it's a, bright steps ahead. I don't know, I said that wrong, but I'm excited. I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what this brings for the sport. And me and Tyler were both saying how we would like for Ben Kennedy to eventually be the head of the table, and that we hope that there's some sort of contingency plan for Ben Kennedy. But if Steve O'Donnell just knocks it out of the park and improves the sport in every which way, like all of a sudden viewership doubles or triples, all of a sudden we're getting a lot more people in the stands. A lot more people are interested on social media. We see a lot more merchandise and gear out there. If we're able to and we're able to create more superstars and all that, then maybe 5-10 years down the road, when they're talking about Ben Kennedy eventually being CEO, we're all kind of like, no, we want O'Donnell to stay in charge because he's doing all the right things. So maybe we can shift our mind on that perspective. But I overall just think this is a great move. I think we're all in agreement. I think this is a great move for the future of the sport. Because I wouldn't say the sport is on its deathbed. I wouldn't quite go that far. NASCAR isn't on its deathbed. But if it continues doing what it's doing when it comes to viewership and everything, it could be on its deathbed within the next couple of years, for all I know. But I think it's a great move. I think this is a great move. Steve O'Donnell, now the head of the table. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How surprised were you about Jim France stepping down? And how do you feel about Steve O'Donnell now being the head of the table, the CEO of NASCAR?